All right, everybody, welcome to Thursday, March 27th, 2025. This is the countrywide coordinator training with Anna von Reitz and Shannon in the background over there. My name is Michelle Ford. I'm the coordinator for the California Assembly. And we're gonna, do we have anyone who would like to open this up in a prayer?
I can do a prayer for you.
Sure, awesome. Thank you, Susan.
Heavenly Father, we come to you today asking for your guidance, wisdom, and support as we begin this meeting. Help us to engage in meaningful discussion, allow us to grow closer as a group, and nurture the bonds of community. Fill us with your grace, Lord God, and continue to remind us that all that we do here today, all that we accomplish, is for the pursuit of truth, for the greater glory of you, and for the service of humanity. We ask these things in your name. So be it.
So be it. Thank you, Susan.
Welcome.
All right. And what about a volunteer to do the Bivens?
This is Michael on Ohio. I'll volunteer again.
Awesome. Thank you, Michael.
Okay, thank you. This is from Bivens versus Six Unknown Agents, 403 US 388 from 1971. This meeting is private. Bearing false witness, misrepresentation, and posting inflammatory rhetoric in public forums is forbidden and shall be addressed in an appropriate manner. To eliminate all conflict and false allegations, is there anyone in attendance at today's meeting that is a member or agent of any law enforcement agency or public agency of the federal, state, county, city, or township agencies present? Is there a response to the Bivens decision for the first time? Is there a response for the second time? Is there a response for the third time? Anyone who is here under false pretenses, anyone working for any foreign government, including the territorial United States or municipal United States, anyone who is being paid or coerced to be here must fully disclose their presence and purpose now or leave the premises or this conference call. And if they subsequently show up as federal witnesses, they are discredited for failure to disclose. Are you now or have you ever received money or personal support of any kind from the intelligence community? Hearing none, upon no response to this notice of the Bivens decision, this meeting shall now proceed. I yield. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Michael. And all right, before we invite Anna up to the stage here, Lisa on Ohio had some important information that she wanted to share briefly with all of our assemblies here. So Lisa, go ahead, take it away.
I don't know that it was that important. Cynthia's twisting my arm, but we've had an active court case that we have been working with, and there is no victim, there is no crime. It's an unfortunate circumstance where the man was charged with domestic violence because his wife was attempting to commit suicide and he stopped it. She attempted to leap out of a second floor window and she bumped her head, scratched her head, and it was bleeding. And in her delusional state, she called the police. And when they got there, they saw blood, they saw him, and they arrested him. When she sobered up the next morning, she realized what had happened. And she did not make a claim against him. The police just assumed the claim against him. And so we've been fighting this case because she even went back, filed her witness testimony with the victim's advocate that said there was no harm, no crime. And the prosecutor decided not to even enter that into or allow the victim's advocate into the courtroom. She had also provided it as registered into the court record, the court clerk, and the prosecutor would not bring it forward, would not bring that statement forward. Okay. Then the prosecutor put her on stand, grilled her, tried to get her to change her testimony. She did not break. I was very proud of her. And so in the meantime, they had thrown him in contempt of court for not crossing the bar. All right, throwing him in jail. He was in jail for 2 days. And he maintained he was innocent, that he would not plead guilty, not guilty. And finally, the judge said, well, I'm going to remand you over. We're going to have a continuance, and I'm going to remand you over for a hearing on contempt of court. And he bound over the case to the county. Well, now we've contacted risk management. We've done the Solicitor General. We've put a removal order in from our court to their court. We've notified our Supreme Court, as well as the county courts, the sheriff, the risk management for both the county and the municipality. They keep kicking the can because now I think they don't know what to do. And they've just done another continuance. Had him in court, did another continuance. And I think they're realizing that they're in trouble. They don't know what to do. And so it's probably going to take another letter to say, look, we know you're in trouble. They keep saying they think they have jurisdiction. Well, they don't. And so we've basically got it kind of boxed in from all directions, because no matter which way they move, the man still has claims. And in the last contempt hearing, the judge lost his cool when he kept saying, I'm innocent, I'm a man, I'm an American, and I'm innocent. Because I explained to him that not guilty means that the burden of proof shifts to you to prove your innocence. When you plead innocent, it's the burden of the court to prove you're innocent, or to prove you're guilty. Okay? And he would not acquiesce on that. And the judge says, well, I'm just going to enter a plea of not guilty. And he said, Judge, are you telling me that you're going to practice on the record, that you're practicing law from the bench under color of law? And the judge lost it. Yes, I am practicing law from the bench under the color of law, screaming in the microphone. He says, I still plead innocent. To which the judge had a continuance order on his desk already at that point and signed the continuance order. He was just trying one more time to trick him into saying he was not guilty. So we're in this continuance cycle at this point, and he had all of the paperwork, and we have submitted a ton of paperwork, and judicial letters and removal orders. And so now we're still playing the game, but we're still on the game board, and the man is not in jail. So right at this point, I think that's I think we're doing pretty well.
Awesome. Well, thank you for that. We did hear a little bit about this last week, but thank you for this update. I know not everybody had a chance to hear it, but Ohio's doing great things, and we can all learn from the work that you guys are doing. So thank you for sharing. Yeah. All right. We're going to switch gears now and put Anna center stage here. And Anna, you might notice that there are a couple of hands up, but these are hands that are just trying to make sure that Susan James needs to go first, because she's going to be leading the land patent call tonight. So she's going to be hopping off in about 45 minutes or so. But the floor is yours, Anna. How are you doing? What's the latest?
Well, let's see. I'm just trying to keep the old nose above water here. There is so much going on. It's just, it's incredible. And it's all good news. It's just, it's like that old saying that good stress is still stress, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, good stress and bad stress. Well, good stress is just as much stress as bad stress. And so we're all stressed out of our minds here. Everybody is working far too many hours and far too many days. And there are far too many different issues and things that are coming up. I I mean, we have never in our history had such a plethora of different issues. I mean, it is the ultimate target-rich environment, and just keeping on our feet and keeping moving and, you know, targeting those things in order has been a major effort on the part of the Federation people. But Jay, where can I even begin? One of the things, since we started with a court case, let's start with how litigation is changing in America and why. Okay. Those of you who have followed along and who know the difference between persons, and you know, hopefully everybody read our recent example of the cat, where you have a living cat and then you name him Felix, and the name is a person. It's not the cat, right? The name is not the cat. And then you have a painting of the cat, and that's another person. It's another representation of the cat, but it's a person too. It's not the cat. A video of the cat. Well, it's a representation of the cat, but again, it's not the cat. And so on. You can make as many of these different persons, these images or representations of the living cat, and you can make as many names and create as many persons for the living cat, but none of them are the living cat. Okay, so we can all get this concept better now, I think. I'm glad we hit upon that analogy and that people are getting it. So when we're talking about persons and we're talking about jurisdictions, one of the fundamental things here is that no living man is subject to their courts. They exist in a jurisdiction where they can only address these persons, these representations of the living man, right? So we've cracked that nut, and we have identified the persons that they created and that they are addressing and that they are responsible for. And it's not us, folks. And so those who've been following along may have noticed that all those IRS charges that were brought against Anna Maria Reisinger von Reitz have been discharged. It just plain vanished into thin air. And it's because there is no such person, okay, first and foremost. There's never been a registration of that person, right? But there have been other things too. And I went over last week how whenever you get summoned or get any kind of communication from the church, or you get any kind of communication from a commercial collection agency or anything like that, take a real good look at the name. And what you will see is that it isn't really addressed to you. It's addressed to this entity, and they don't even bother to put a period after the middle initial that they just so gratuitously attach. It appears to be an initial, but it's actually just a letter floating in space. And so there's no way of telling if this is addressed to Anna Margaret Reisinger or Anna Marie Reisinger or Anna Matilda Reisinger. Or it's a void for vagueness issue where they haven't really named you. And that's how they're getting away with it. It's only when you assume the name that they can come along and say, okay, well, you're the guilty party, right? So never do that. Never just respond to the court. Send the communication or the summons or whatever it is back to the court and simply say, you know, who are you talking to here? You know, I have a somewhat similar name, but you know, is this George William Benson, or is this George Whitaker Benson, or is is this George Washington Benson, or you know, who the hell are you talking about? And it's amazing. It just goes like that. Be sure and sign this correspondence just as, with your first and middle name, your given name, your true given name, which your parents absolutely did give you, right? Because in their nomenclature, the name of a living person is always composed of just two parts. And your given name, which your parents gave you, is the first and middle is the name that they can't challenge. They can challenge your first, middle, last because the last name has been claimed by the government, the surname. They call it a surname because originally when they were passing out names and titles, only the sirs and esquires and officers got a surname. Okay, does that make sense? Like Sir Sagramore and whatever. So you don't want to use your last name in corresponding with the court like this. You just want to bring up the issue that you've not been specifically addressed and you don't know what this is about, and sign it Anna Maria or James Clinton or whatever your first, middle, the two names that your parents thought up and gave to you that were not handed down or handed to you by some authority. Okay, and just send it back, and you know what's going to happen? That's as good as telling them that they're responsible for their damn franchises and they can pay their own damn debts. And they can answer their own charges because this is all being done as sort of theater, this airy-fairy world that they created. And so let them lie in it. We can bypass that, and we should. Now, I don't know the status of the people. I'm assuming that both of the people that Lisa's talking about in Ohio are on the land and soil, both husband and wife. So really, to undermine the prosecutor, all they have to do is inform the court via the court clerk that they've been misidentified. They don't know what this is about. As far as they're concerned, all of this is very uncertain. They don't know why this court is misaddressing them because it's clearly an issue that belongs in a common law court, which they have, and a court that is devoted to addressing business interests and whatnot should not be addressing them. And furthermore, what is this name that they're addressing all this to? Take a good look. You will see that they're not actually addressing the people. They're addressing a thing because they have to address a thing. They have to be a little bit disingenuous. They have to try to obscure what they're doing because they can't really address a living man or woman at all.
Yeah, and we learned about that in the Penhallow versus Doan's administrators case in the late 1700s, 1795, I think it was, something like that.
Very early case.
Yeah.
And they do the switcheroo on the name on that case. It's a split jurisdiction case because it involved some issues at sea and some issues on the land. So depending on which case you read, you get an entirely different interpretation and different annotations.
Wait, so is one Penhallow versus Doan's administrators, and then the other one is Doan's administrators versus Penhallow?
Right. Yeah. So, yeah, we often, when we cite that case, they often come back and say, oh, it doesn't say anything of that sort. Because, of course, they're looking at their jurisdiction case and not at ours. And so then we have to, okay, well, there it is. But anyway, it's very much the same sort of thing where they're preying on the ignorant and then they're assuming whatever suppositions they have assumed about us. I find it interesting that when you get right down to it, the only actual charges that they can bring are contempt of court and perjury. They only have two actual valid charges that they can bring at any time. And obviously, Lisa, you have shoved them into a good corner because they're dragging out one of their two defensive maneuvers. They couldn't get him on perjury because he hadn't signed anything. But they've lambasted him with contempt of court. So what is contempt of court? That's where you're not showing proper respect to the court itself, right? It's as if you're saying that the court has no reason or right to exist. Interestingly enough, it looks to me like Congress is getting prepared to do exactly that and remove the district court system, the whole system.
Wow. That would
Yeah.
certainly wake up the world, wouldn't it?
Hey, I'm ready. Oh, yeah. You know, we've had this funky-dory district court system, military district court system, since 1865, and it never had any valid basis or reason for its existence. So, you know, gung-ho, come on. I don't care what excuses they use to get the job done, just remove it. But according to Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House, that's precisely what they're gearing up to do.
Well, that'll be a huge win. And when they finally dismantle the Department of quote, education, that'll be a good one to go to.
Well, I don't know if you noticed it or not, but Gavin Newsom got some very bad news today. No more federal funding.
Woohoo!
Well, that's going to take just billions upon billions upon billions right out of the California, billionaires club and all the
slush
cronies,
fund.
the slush fund and all the cronies and all the political party hacks will be cut off and they'll be screaming bloody murder. But you know what? That's just good news for the rest of us.
Yeah. You're welcome, the rest of the country. No more money going to China out of the Sacramento.
Exactly. And
fabulous. Good.
No more waste on high-speed rail systems that are never going to be built at the rate that they're proceeding. They have done nothing with billions and billions of dollars that have been spent supposedly on this high-speed rail system in California, which could have been built 10 years ago and wasn't. So California is in deep doggy-doo in terms of the legalities and the amount of corruption in the state. And it's all due to Democratic Party mishandling, malfeasance, misappropriations, dirty deals with the unions, all sorts of crap. And I think that New York and California are both in for some really severe fiscal auditing and course corrections. And I think that a lot of the politics is going to come out. People are going to get a chance to see what these guys were really all about. And it's not going to be good.
No,
no matter what you do, it's not going to be good. What could I say about that? People make their choices in life. They have a choice between being a crook and not being a crook. And, they found themselves in a situation where they were hobnobbing with crooks and it was all the fashion to be a crook. And so these weak-minded and immoral people just fell in line and were there at the trough with their hands open. Unfortunately for them, it's the old line of if you don't oppose crime, you're an accomplice. You know, if you know something is going on and you know that it's wrong, and you do nothing, you don't report it, you don't oppose it, then you get painted with the same brush. And so there are a lot of people at the state level who did not know what was going on any more than the rest of us. But then there were those who did know. And those who did know are accomplices to the federal level crime.
Wow. Well, I have a feeling there's going to be a lot of accomplices because there's been, you know, money changing hands and unlawful, you know, horse trading among the politicians and the lobbyists. And when we observe what's going on, it's definitely difficult to find out who's ultimately accountable, who's doing the dirty work. Mm-hmm. But Newsom, you know, being the head of that snake, he's certainly accountable. So it's all going to roll uphill at the end of the day.
That's a good way of putting it, Michelle. We're used to things rolling downhill. This time it's rolling uphill.
Right.
And I'm really kind of encouraged because the information that we've been feeding them all these years is finally gaining the traction it needs to be recognized and to do the work that needs to be done. You know, no secret to us, the Civil War was a mercenary conflict. We can prove it. We have proven it. That just takes the teeth and the whole matrix that they've built and dissolves it, because they've been pretending this entire time that what they had here was a military occupation of our country, you know, for a protectorate. Okay, they've misrepresented this as a military protectorate and a military occupation of our country. And it is not a military occupation, it's an illegal mercenary occupation. And that puts an entirely different color on what's happened here and who's responsible and what they need to do in terms of correction. Now, they don't like it, but, you know, the facts, ma'am, are the facts. And we can prove that the Civil War was a mercenary conflict with many different pieces of evidence. We can prove it from the fact that no Congress actually declared a war. We can prove it from the fact that no actual peace process and peace treaty was issued to finalize and end the so-called war. We can prove it from the muster rolls of the soldiers that were actually inducted into the service during the Civil War, who signed up to fight for the state of New York, the state of North Carolina. We can prove it from the fact that the southern states very forthrightly called themselves the Confederate States of America. And we can prove from that, we can go back from that, that yes, indeed, they were acting as Confederate states throughout, meaning states of states, meaning commercial entities. Okay? Yep. So there are multiple ways that we can prove that the so-called American Civil War was in fact a commercial mercenary occupation. And we can also therefore prove that Abraham Lincoln acted under color of law and conditions of non-disclosure and deceit, and unlawfully converted our national military into a mercenary force. And we can also then go back and prove that this was not a military protectorate. It was an illegal occupation by a mercenary force. And all of this stuff begins to accumulate against them. And so the Hague Conventions were developed out of the Lieber Code that Abraham Lincoln designed. And this is for the false supposition that there is a military protectorate and a prolonged occupation of this country by a legitimate national military. And so all of those presumptions are not true. They're simply not true. And just as we went through today and very succinctly said, all three of the public trusts that were established under this system of presumptions have to go. The quote unquote intestate American infant decedent estate that was purportedly waived for you by your mother has to be dissolved in your favor. There are so many things about this. The bogus British seaman's estate for you that was established by the British Crown, identifying you as a lost British merchant mariner, specifically a warrant officer known as a taxpayer. That has to be dissolved. And of course, the municipal estate trust, the Sestake Trust, that was formed by the municipal government on behalf of the other dual federal citizen, the citizen of the United States, has to be dissolved. Now, here's, I'm looking at this recently, and what they did on those forms that your mother signed, they claimed that you were a United States citizen.
Yeah.
With a capital C. That means that they're claiming that you are an officer or official attached to the old federal republic that they laid claim to on February 2nd, 1871. And that they have operated deceitfully as a corporation ever since. So none of us, let me tell you flatly, none of us have ever qualified to be United States citizens with a capital C. There is very lengthy and precise procedure by which an American, a state national, can elect to become a United States citizen under the auspices of the old Federal Republic. And it is written in the first Naturalization and Immigration Act. It is still preserved in the statutes at large. And none of us have gone through this lengthy process of declaration once past the age of 25, I believe, to become a federal United States citizen. Also, we're not Negroes. We're not just released from slavery on a plantation. We are not stateless. We don't meet the requirements to ever be identified as a small citizen, small c, citizen of the United States either. So by either one of those standards, there is no flipping way that the vast majority of us could be mistaken for either variety of citizen, and yet they have maintained this farce, this charade, for the better part of a century and a half. Now, how is that possible?
And coupled with this presumption of wartime, like you were talking about with this presumption of this, civil war that wasn't a war,
right.
This presumption of wartime, your peacetime, your peace treaty that you did, in 2021, you did the International Peace Proclamation and Grand Peace Treaty. And that ended all presumptions of war for all declared Americans.
Right.
And so, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but.
Well, and our country was never involved in
Right.
their mercenary conflict. Our states never had anything to do with it.
Right.
And so our people had nothing to do with it. And we're certainly at peace with our employees, are we not? We should be if we're not. I mean, how does an employee maintain a war against their employer? Okay.
Especially an employee that managed to fund themselves into the most powerful, standing army, if you will, with all of the armaments and all of the guns and nuclear weapons and, everything. If we were ever idiotic enough to go to war with such a, such a setup, we would be ridiculous, because who could win against that kind of armed force?
Yes, but
the pen is mightier than the sword.
The facts and the law
Alas.
are on our side.
Mm-hmm.
And we are gaining more and more traction on the bank side, because remember, the banks are liable for any money they give them of ours. Mm-hmm. Since we have raised our hands, the banks are liable. So that means that the banks are going to be looking at those old constitutional contracts that were sitting dusty on the shelves, and they're going to have to make a determination of whether the expenses being charged off against us and our credit are constitutional or not. And just today, we poked a hole in one of their very favorite pork barrels, which is the Monroe Doctrine, which allowed them to expand out internationally and begin meddling in the affairs of other countries and other nations. Well, we never agreed to the Monroe Doctrine. This was a misrepresentation of our national policy. As a country, America has never approved of interfering in the affairs of other countries. This is very much opposed. This idea of Monroe Doctrine and manifest destiny and all that other crap was just an excuse for warmongering and meddling and profiteering that they wanted to pursue as commercial entities. But the actual government has never approved any of that. So from now on, the bankers will have that to chew on too.
Well, thank you, Anna. These are all great reminders. And there's a question in the chat in regards to global family. Is there anything that you have, any updates on that? And I know we have hands up too, but I don't know if you're ready for Q&A or not.
Well, we have decided on the prepaid credit dollar, which will be equal to 1 ounce of silver. And that makes absolute sense because the exchange rate was established by them as 1 Federal Reserve note being equal to 1 silver dollar, which is equal to 1 ounce of silver. Now, we all know that today it takes around 33 of those Federal Reserve notes to buy 1 silver dollar. So your prepaid credit note, or not note, but your prepaid credit dollar will be equivalent to the exchange rate between silver and Federal Reserve notes, whatever that is, on an ongoing basis. So if tomorrow the exchange rate is 35 Federal Reserve notes to 1 ounce of silver, you will get the benefit of $35 worth of the Federal Reserve notes for every ounce of silver or every prepaid credit note. That way you don't get gypped. All right, so the prepaid credit dollar, or I don't know, maybe it may come out as prepaid credit unit or prepaid credit whatever, but you know, we're just calling it prepaid credit dollar for now. We'll be using that exchange rate, and we'll be using silver as the denominator in common. Okay, so that's very good and exciting news. In a way, yes, but the that ensures that we don't fall victim to inflation or deflation. What we're looking at right now in terms of the economy is a violent deflation, similar to what was done in the 1930s. And it's a devaluation, and I should say a deflation instead of an inflation. The Federal Reserve note will become rarer than hen's teeth because, number one, the Federal Reserve will not be printing any more Federal Reserve notes. And those that are still in circulation will become increasingly rare, which will serve to increase their value as a trading commodity. Okay, so what they're trying to set up is something very similar to the 1930s, only worse. Something that would be like the 1930s, but would extend throughout the planet and would impact, yes, would impact all the world economies. They're also trying to buck things up and make it look like the Federal Reserve note is actually very valuable because it will become very scarce. But instead, by flipping the ledger on its head, we hope to completely bypass that entire scenario. And there are a lot of things about economics that nobody ever talks about. One of them is the way that the deflationary spiral, which everybody's so afraid of, is actually what created the middle class.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, well, if you look at it, prior to the Industrial Revolution, you had all the serfs, you had a small cadre of bureaucrats, and then you had the elites, the titled gentry and all of those folks. But it was a polarized society with very little in the middle. And an outrageous proportion, I think it was something near 70% of all of the people were in rural areas working on farms and basically just eking out a living. And everything was very, very expensive because it all had to be made by hand. And if you stop and think about it, imagine growing flax on your land and then having to harvest the flax and then having to let the flax deteriorate underwater for a period of time and then having to take it out as these slimy, half-decayed stems of the flax plant, linen plant, and then beat it, you know, to get the usable fiber out of it, and then have to wash it and treat it with chemicals and whatnot to finally arrive at a product that could be made into thread and then woven into cloth. And then you have to, measure and cut the cloth and sew it into a garment. And that, this is the kind of process, or taking cotton from the cotton ball stage, having grown the cotton, having harvested the cotton, then having to get the oily seeds and other detritus out of the cotton, then having to comb the cotton to get the fibers. You know, it's an entire huge process. And if you're doing this all by hand, it's extremely labor intensive. And none of it is really skilled labor. It's labor, right? So you had this huge number of people that are engaged in doing these very laborious tasks. And all of a sudden, here comes the Industrial Revolution. All of a sudden, it's fast. You can make a whole dress in next to no time. We forget how important cotton milling really was, and how this revolutionized clothing manufacture. We forget about how the advent of power tools made a complete difference in everything. I mean, I forget what it was, but it was like in the 1870s, late 1870s, that we had our first power tools. You know, the first time that you had a drill, the first time that you had a sewing machine, you know, the first time that you had a cotton gin. All of a sudden, all this stuff started coming, and it relieved the burden of the labor and made everything much faster and cheaper. And while we are the beneficiaries of all this now and take it for granted, back then, what it did is that it opened up a space, a largesse that led to people being able to buy more commodities for less effort, and created the middle class, created all these jobs related to manufacturing and marketing and sales and transport and finished goods, and took away the great emphasis on just producing the commodities to a shift toward producing value-added products, and took people out of the back-breaking labor of just producing the commodities and opened up the middle class. So it was a deflationary spiral, an increase in productivity, and a shift away from a focus on what I will call baseline production of commodities to a fundamental refocusing of the economy on end products. Okay, value-added products. That's where we were up until the 1960s, when another revolution came. And most of us were not really that aware of this revolution, but that revolution was plastics. Okay, so that was the industrial side. And then what's over here on this other side is computers. So you've got two different gigantic new developments, which are vastly increasing productivity. Now, all of us know how much a computer expedites workflow. Okay, but all of that was not shared with the public, meaning that your productivity as a worker was spun off as a benefit for the corporation you worked for, but you remained at the same wage or the same salary. You didn't get your share of that increase in productivity. And plastics, while they provided cheap, clean ways of packaging things like food, then created another nightmare that was not accounted for either, and that was how to dispose of plastics without polluting the air or burying them in, you know, ineffective cesspits that will last 1,000,000 years. You know, we never dealt with the the problem of plastics. And so we've got these two things that are coming, out of the 60s, basically, that have affected our entire economy. And as these companies have been siphoning off the profit from the productivity gains, they've been laying more and more of their taxes and their expenses and their responsibilities off on the living people that they basically cheated out of a share of the productivity gains. So in effect, the Industrial Revolution gave rise to the middle class, and now this other revolution in chemistry and in computer productivity.
We'll listen to this tomorrow, Mom.
Huh?
Sorry,
Anna,
tomorrow.
we have a hot mic. I'll take care of that.
Has been killing the middle class as the predatory corporations have, basically refused to share the productivity profits with the workers who make those productivity gains possible by using the computers. You see, our wages and salaries have not in any way kept pace with the profits and the gain in productivity. And so, we're still here fighting about whether workers will get $15 an hour for, a base salary or a base earnings per hour, when that amount should have increased, commensurate with the productivity increase. So if a computer has made you 10 times more productive, you should be getting 10 times the wage that you were getting before this, minus the cost of the equipment. But anyway, these corporations have been skinning us blind for decades, and nobody's been even talking about this. People aren't even thinking about it. They're not aware of the productivity gains and how these corporations have left the workers in a cloud of dust, and how these corporations have schemed against the human employees by developing robots. See, this is all about increasing productivity again, using AI and using robots to replace living people. So not only did they skin us, they are looking to make us obsolete in the workplace. And then the question begins to happen, oh, well, what are we going to do with all these extra people? And this is where you get the real drive. This is the incentive, the motive behind this idea that we're overpopulated. We're not overpopulated. In fact, in Europe and in this country, we've been in population collapse since World War II. No, it's not that. The problem is that they're seeing this in terms of all these excess workers. And what are we going to do with all these excess workers? They're also in this mindset of that they have done something so wonderful, that these corporations are just so magnificent. They take credit for everything. They give no credit to the actual people, the boots on the ground. They take all the credit, they take all the profit, and they take everything else for granted. The natural resources, the people that actually enter the data in the computers, everything. They think that their corporations are next door to God, if not God. And so this is the mentality that we have to recognize exists. And it's also what we need to tear down, because these corporations have developed monopolistic enterprises, interlocking trust directorates, all sorts of illegal and unlawful, immoral means of promoting their agendas at the express expense of the earth and of the workers. Now, at about this time, some of you are thinking, well, what happened to the labor unions? Why aren't they standing there with their hands out for a share of the productivity profits? Certainly they know that productivity profits exist. Certainly they know that these corporations made out like bandits based on the labor of human computer operators. So, why isn't AFSCME and Laborers International and all these other labor unions, why aren't they out there promoting the fair share going back to the workers so that the workers can then have decent lives and decent educations and have the benefits of all of the value that they are adding into the economy? Are we supposed to suppose that these labor unions are so stupid that they don't get it? I certainly don't give them any such pass card. I think that they've been bought off and they've been selling out the workers for at least 50 years. And I think that the Democratic political party has been doing the same. And as far as the Republicans are concerned, although they have some very decent human values still expressed, they have unduly protected the corporate interests.
Well, yeah, and all the taxation and fines and permits and fees and licenses and all the ways that they end up skimming off the top, further making it impossible for the actual worker to, make a decent living, a decent amount of money. I think in general, people want to be productive. They want to actually work, but why do they have to share so much of it with the employees of the corporations that end up, using that money for war and to poison us to death, for crying out loud?
Right, exactly. So, again, it's a story of the foxes ruling the hen house and the chickens not getting organized. Okay. And, putting too much faith in institutions which are too easily corruptible.
Yeah.
Anyway, here's my 10-minute seminar on economics in the 21st century. But really, folks, these are concepts that you need to think about, and think about them in a very practical way. It's not rocket science. It's not something that you need a 8-year college degree to understand. It's all things that you can directly observe for yourself. I mean, just the other day I was talking about how difficult it was for me to learn how to type because I have absolutely horrible eye-hand coordination. And how my father was, going, praise God, it's a miracle, and watching me, thump along in my old manual typewriter. And I was thinking about that and thinking about how I can type so very fast now. I mean, I can literally type as fast as I think, okay? So I'm thinking about how that expedites what I can produce in a day. And I'm multiplying that across all the other people and all the other different kinds of jobs who have become much, much more productive as a result of being able to input data into computers, use computers to produce graphics, to draw architectural plans, to design dresses, to do so many other things, okay? This is all productivity gains which the workforce has not captured, okay? And we need to be thinking about that in terms of the impact that has on the economy and on the people. All right, so heads up. Those of you who have belonged to labor unions, either white collar or blue collar, think about the productivity gains that the workers have not shared in. And ask yourself, why is that? And as we go forward here, consider that our military hasn't had a real raise since the 1960s.
Wait, who hasn't had a raise since the 1960s?
Our military.
Ah.
They've had cost of living increases. But the enlisted members of our military forces, aside from those cost of living increases meant to keep them even with inflation, more or less, haven't had a raise since like 1965. This is because they've been kept as the world's cheapest mercenaries. Okay, there's a method to the madness. And so we have the situation where, say, a private first class or an airman first class can't afford to have a wife and a child. They have to take food stamps and get Section 8 because they don't make enough money in the military. So, you know, wherever you look, the workers, the boots on the ground, have been sacrificed and have not shared in the wealth and the profit from gains in productivity, and they have not made any progress in the economy since the 1960s.
Pretty scary when you think about it, because a lot of people are suffering out there, Anna. Even on our own assemblies, a lot of people are suffering. And we're a small sampling of what's going on, you know, out in the world. So it's pretty scary out there.
Well, it's very scary, and there's no excuse for it. You know, when you start really delving into how this has been mismanaged, it all comes back to Congress. I'm sorry, but it does. Just the amount of complete utter waste and abuse that DOGE has brought forward so far is more than enough to convince anybody with a brain that, hey, we've been on a train without a conductor for a long time. And that conductor, that missing conductor, is Congress. Now, they've come forward and said, oh, we represent them, but they've had no accountability. They have sat in the seats of our fiduciary deputies, and they have assumed the power and authority to spend our credit for us, but they have not taken on the responsibility that goes with that right, which is the fiduciary responsibility to make sure that that money is appropriated for allowable expenses under the contract of the Constitution, right? And to make sure that that money actually reaches its destination. So the Congress failed to live up to its assumption of power. And they also failed to ride the results of things that they did to the judiciary. It was Congress acting in 1991 that changed the judicial oath so that judges do not have to make decisions agreeable to the constitutions. Congress did that. Congress is the ultimate end-line entity that is responsible for making appropriations, but they are also responsible for making sure those appropriations don't go astray. Congress is the entity that set up the military district courts that have been preying upon Americans for 160 years. So Congress is the entity that bears the majority, the brunt of the responsibility for what has gone on here And, you know, certainly the judicial branch and the executive branch have their shares of the pile of iniquity. But when you get right down to it, most of what we're seeing here began with legislative defaults, legislative miscommunication, legislative malfeasance. So these members of Congress who are now waking up and starting to take effective action to end the district court system, those that are waking up to the amount, the staggering amount and misuse and abuse of payola and appropriations going astray, they're at the tip of the spear. And that's always a hard place to be. But nonetheless, it's work that the Congress owes to the people, and our state citizens are the people that have the right and rule and responsibility to hold them accountable. So, state citizens, and also a big round of applause to the 42 states that are ready to set up their prosperity centers. I'm told now that we are ready to begin that process of buying the first brick and mortar facilities for each of those states. Those guys that are not ready, you 8 that are being laggards, hurry up, come on, get going. And I think that everybody will be thrilled, and everybody will be very, very happy with the results of our bank effort. We continue to face some obstacles. We continue to face some disagreements. But by and large, we are getting everything that we need in place and ready to open our doors, and we're not waiting for October, I can tell you that. The prosperity centers, the brick and mortars, do not have to be functioning before we rip cord, okay? It's important that we get the brick and mortar prosperity centers set up so that people actually have a place where they can go and they can talk to a live person and they can actually get answers directly. But the fundamental first dash is all online. So you'll have an online banking service that tracks both your AFD and your prepaid credit dollars. And you'll be able to help your friends, your family, your community. You'll have enough to see you through whatever happens. And in the meantime, we will be out there pushing and forcing and carrying and doing everything that we need to do to uphold the rights and fulfill the responsibilities of the living people.
Awesome. Well, I know everybody's going to be relieved when that day comes, Anna.
Oh, yeah. I know.
Yeah.
I know. And I just want to assure you that we are aware of the urgency of many needs, and we are doing everything that we can right now to, number one, take down the criminal military district court system, okay, and to force those corrections on the judiciary that are long overdue, such as the correction of the oath, and to educate the public, and to get the bank flying.
Well, I know that there are a lot of people in our assemblies that are ready. They're ready not only to receive their prepaid credit, but they're also ready to help. A lot of states have a treasurer, even if it's an interim treasurer like California. And we're definitely ready. We've got our backup signatories in place, and we're ready.
Well, there are 42 states out of 50 that are ready, and the other 8 are going to be playing a game of real pushback and catch up, because just imagine the lights go on in 42 states and your state is still dark. Hello. Everybody in that state is going to have a relative in one of the other states that's going to be saying, oh, this is so great. I was able to, discharge the mortgage, and I was able to, pay off all the college debts and blah, 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 blah. And you're going to be sitting there in those other 8 states going, what happened? How do I get mine? And then you're going to realize that you have to build it yourself. Better to realize it now and get on the track.
There's a question in the chat. Does anyone know the list of the states that are the list of the 42 states? Do you have that, Anna?
No, I don't, and I didn't memorize it. I was just kind of given the word and poked in the ribs, telling me that, okay, you got 42 out of 50. Now, where's the rest? Get your act in order and come forward, guys. But anyway, we are making wonderful progress, and I expect that as a result of our activities and communications, there will be more wonderful progress every week from now on.
Awesome. Now, are you ready to take some questions? I know Susan James has been waiting, and wait a minute. Where is Susan? Did Susan leave? Holy Toledo.
I didn't mean to talk her out of her space.
Oh, oh, she left.
Oh,
she had to run. All right. In that case, we'll go straight to Anita. Are you ready for questions, Anna?
Sure.
All right. Anita, go ahead.
Okay, I had to get to my screen. Thank you, Anna. I don't get to talk to you very often. I think about you and the Federation every day, and all the work that you and hundreds of people, maybe even thousands of people, have put into saving our country. And it seems so insignificant to say thank you. But when our banks are up and running, I want to make my first transaction to go to you and the Federation. So how would be the best way to do that for you all?
I really don't know the answer to that question right now. I will have a fiduciary account, but that is that's uniquely a account for doing the restitution and the recoupment actions, to go out and get money that belongs to us and bring it back. Okay, so I don't really have a Federation account per se at this time. Probably we'll just set up a Federation account, and that you'll be able to just transfer to the Federation account if you want to make a donation toward our work.
Just do a wire transfer, like?
No, within the global system, you'll have a online screen in front of you, and you'll have one side will be AFD and the other side will be the prepaid credit, and you'll be able to make donations of either one to whoever or whatever you want that has an account within the system. So if I get a Federation account, you'll be able to make a donation directly to the Federation. Right now, I don't have one. I've just got a fiduciary account that we use for when we go out and we make recoupments. Say, we go out and we claim $1 trillion worth of gold. Okay.
All right.
That is what's being passed through the fiduciary account, is those sorts of things where we're going out and finding gold that was taken offshore. We're finding silver that was cashiered in you know, Spain. We're finding assets that belong to us, meaning all of us, all over the world. And of course, the U.S. has been going out there and claiming all this stuff too, and dragging it back. But then they're trying to foist it off as if this all belongs to British territorial U.S.C citizens, and thereby avoid the actuality of dissolving all those infant decedent estate trusts and giving us control of our money and our assets. So that's where the loggerheads are with Mr. Trump. They want to act as the receivers of the municipal bankruptcy, and they don't want to give us, they don't want to release us from the false citizenship obligations that they foisted off on us with the birth certificate fraud. And we're continuing to work on that. But anyway, I kind of got off track there, Anita. We'll set up something so that people can contribute directly to the Federation. And the Federation folk will greatly appreciate that, because we've been running on vapors for a long time.
Well, I don't think you'll be running on vapors once it opens up, but that'll be my first transaction. Thank you so much.
Thank you, dear. Yeah, well, Shannon says he runs on grits and spite.
I'm going to try to send you some more apples this year.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow. That'll be wonderful. You know, that made the most wonderful Thanksgiving pie I ever had.
Well, I'm glad.
It was truly memorable. My husband has been asking me, he says, well, that apple pie was pretty good, but that one you got, you know, from those apples last year, that was really special.
All right, I'll try to get you some real soon. I yield. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's awesome. Thank you, Anita. All right, next up we have Jason.
1 second, let me pass my structure over. Cody, take over.
Uh-oh.
Whatever you choose.
It's a pass-through.
Yeah.
Well, I teaching my martial arts class.
Oh, nice.
And I make them work out because they sit in front of the TV too much. So, so just 2 quick questions. First one is there any chance we can find the image in the Library of Congress of the Constitution for the United States of America, the territorial one? I see the one that you have on your website, but I'd like to see if we can find the image of it. And then the second question pertains to last Thursday, they were talking about like the 5G and the wireless meters and trying to attack or undo the what they're doing. But I was wondering, you know, could we actually start maybe getting together individually and start submitting conditional acceptance letters, just individually, to, you know, bring awareness that these technologies are not safe. And, you know, could we actually, you know, get a really good movement going that way to bring power through that particular process?
Well, there's a really good already organized organization called the Empower Movement.
Yes.
You're aware of them in Canada?
Yes.
And so there are a lot of Americans, including myself, who already belong to that and give that, you know, power to the people. And they bring forth a lot of research and a lot of work and different means of addressing the politicians and local governments on that. I guess I've been pretty content with what they've been doing, and we just adapt it to America.
Yeah, because I've heard a lot of people trying to kind of go after Congress and legislation, you know, trying to go that particular route. But I'm thinking maybe it might be better, you know, I mean, at least to start, just having the people, you know, start submitting conditional acceptance letters to these companies And once they start building, from my understanding, is that there'll be so many that they will have to show that these things are safe, which they can't, or they're just going to have to close up, or they have to start, paying us, money on a daily, weekly, or however, much of a basis that we're doing on that one. So I'm thinking that might be something that everybody can start doing, would be just conditional acceptance letters.
Well, and that will matter to commercial corporations, of course, because that puts liability on them. However, that also then requires us to operate in commerce, which we don't want to do because it's not to our advantage, and it isn't true that we're not commercial entities. The fact of the matter is that Donald Trump has the controls firmly in hand and isn't about to let them unleash 5 or 6G on anybody, as a weapon. That isn't within the capability of the known rats, the real rats, the ones that have done all the geoengineering and all of that. Okay, that is outside their capability at this point. So I'm less worried about the 5G and 6G being used as a weapon. I'm more worried about geoengineering being used as a weapon.
Yes.
And so, given my druther between where to best spend limited resources and time, it doesn't cost much or create much of a furor. Certainly, you could send a conditional acceptance if you want to. I spent my money on a smart meter cage that acts as a Faraday cage and blocks the smart meter from exploding or causing problems from my home. There's a very successful movement underway to remove smart meters and smart technology and 5G towers from anywhere near a school. So that is underway. I'm less worried, to tell you the truth, about the meters and the microwave towers than I am about any number of other eventualities that are, probably more likely to catch up to us. But I'm not downplaying the fact that they're bad for us. I'm not downplaying the fact that we should not have them and don't need them. I mean, at 4G, we were already maxed out. Human beings cannot use more than 4G. We just don't have the capability of making use of 5G or 6G. It's only AI that can use 5G and 6G speeds for any productive gain. So, we would be enduring the EM radiation and its bad effects on our biological health for the sake of relatively small gains that could be experienced by AI. And so it does not make sense that we have all these 5G and 6G towers installed. And it does not make sense that Congress once again tried to bypass local law. It's like the Congress has lost its mind. They realize in the back of their minds, if they have minds, that our government is based on the sacred nature and natural unalienable rights of the individual, and that local county government supersedes anything that they have to offer in terms of determining what we will and will not have in our communities. The problem has been that we haven't organized our counties and asserted our supremacy. So as soon as we start organizing our counties and telling the county of organizations, the incorporated counties, what we want done in our county, they don't have anything left to say. Okay, because they really are our employees.
Yes.
And so, organizing your county and as a county saying, no, we don't want 6G towers, can supersede any power that the Congress has to, tell their counties not to object to 6G. They're using their system like your typical pecking order Their corporation tells the state of state franchise this, and then the state of state franchise tells the county of franchise that, right? And within their system and within their jurisdiction, they can get away with that. But when we come back, it goes the opposite way. The county that we form has precedence and jurisdiction over everything that happens on the land and soil. And we can therefore turn to their county and say, nah, we don't want 6G towers. We don't want them next to our schools. We don't want them next to our churches. In fact, we don't want them, period, at all. There's lots of information that shows that these things are dangerous and that they can be weaponized, and we do not wish to be cooked from the inside out, as if we were in a microwave oven. So you can just take these things and shove them, okay? And we can also do things that protect our homes. There's technology out there to form basically protective domes over our homes and our neighborhoods. We have a machine that creates a 2.5 kilometer dome over our community. So we can start deploying some of these technologies too, even in advance of taking those sorts of actions. I think it cost me $5,600. I bought it several years ago, but it protects our whole small community.
Yeah.
Anyway, there's a lot we need to do, and I agree with you, it's important. And if we organize our counties, we'll gain a lot of leverage to make that happen and to set parameters and limits on these corporations.
Yes. And then would you by chance know where we can find the original documentation on the second Constitution? I mean, an image of it.
You mean the first federal Constitution of 1787?
I think it's the 1789. It's the territorial Constitution.
Oh, you can find that anywhere. It's published. That's what you see as the Constitution of the United States of America. The one that's rare is the Constitution for the United with a small u, States of America, upper lowercase. That's the 1787 Constitution that is rare. You can find copies of the 1789 Constitution at any library or bookstore. They're still published on a regular basis. It's the 1787 Constitution that's rare and hard to find. And most of we do have one that came out of a library in England that is a representation that was sent to England at the time it was passed. So we do have that, but most of the copies of the Constitution for the United States of America, 1787, come out of other publications where they were published as part of a book, say, or they were published as part of a government manual for the diplomatic corps, or, those sorts of things. So we have multiple copies of the 1787 Federal Constitution in those sorts of formats. But yeah, that's the hard one. 1789 you can find all day.
Yeah, because I was going on your website and you had the link to the LOC for the Constitution for the United States. And then the territorial one, it just brought up a typed document. And then the third one, the link brings up the image of the third municipal constitution. So I was just trying to see if we could find the images of that second document. So
yeah, I'm absolutely sure you can find that. The other one we have archived, we are looking at what to do because it's in such a large format. A lot of these things were pinned on these giant broadsheets that are like, 18 by 24 inches. They're handwritten, they're in French. archaic French, which is the language of diplomacy at the time. And so given the physical constraints and the language problems that are involved, we just haven't put a lot of emphasis on doing that because number one, French is not our first language, and number two, archaic diplomatic French is another whole animal. And so there's limited utility to be gained by publishing.
Yeah.
Very few people will be able to read it. And that's from somebody who went through the entire rigor of having to learn how to interpret archaic diplomatic French, handwritten. Not fun. Anyway.
Okay, that's all I was wondering, was those two things there. I'll let you move on, so I yield. Thank you so much.
Take care.
Thank you. All right, Dolores, you're up.
Hi, good evening, Anna and everyone. I have, I hope, a quick question. I
hope I have a quick answer. How's that?
You very often have mentioned the Fourth Geneva Convention and Article 3, where it says that they cannot change our legal status, right? And
right.
then
they can't change our political status or anything. They have to honor our national status.
So when we have the declaration of political status, the word legal is translated maybe by the word political. So
political is legal, okay?
Okay.
Our lawful standing is not affected by the Geneva Conventions.
Mm-hmm.
The Geneva Conventions and the Hague Conventions are civilian, Geneva, and military, Hague. Okay, so you got two different worlds there, civilian world and military world. And so the Hague Conventions were developed out of Abraham Lincoln's Lieber Code. Okay, and the Geneva Conventions were developed out of just an entire history of how do you deal with civilian populations and in wartime, right? How do you what are civilians owed during wartime, and what are captured soldiers owed during wartime? And then the Hague Conventions are about the military's role primarily as an occupation force. Okay. So, the two things are addressing issues related to war, but from the standpoint of the civilian population versus the military administrators, if that makes sense.
So thank you for all of that. My question in concrete for the Spanish translation and all the Spanish-speaking countries, legal in Spanish is jurídico, means right. Jurídico, meaning what jurisdiction's law is applied to you. So to begin with, we translated Declaration of Political Status as Declaración de Estatus Político. But político in Spanish is more related to political parties. So for 5 years, I've been going on in my brain about this word political, if it was appropriate for the Spanish translation. And then we've done a lot of research and finally decided that we should maybe call it jurídico to make clear that we are not in your jurisdiction, we are in a different jurisdiction. Because obviously the body of the document explains very clearly that we are not citizens of Spain. We are nationals of Spain, which is a different thing.
Right.
So I'm helping now people in Argentina, and I want to make sure that I've got your blessing for using jurídico instead of político. Does it make sense?
It does entirely, and you're correct. They have politics. We don't have politics. They have political parties. We don't have political parties.
Correct.
They have political elections. We have public elections. So I think you're correct. Yeah, I think you've got it correct.
Okay, thank you. And then I ask you another quick question and I let other people go. You always says that the post office is backed by gold. And today I think by yeah, sorry.
They changed that about a year ago. They took the post office off the gold standard. I think it was because they had to return so much of the gold that was being used as gold bonds. So they took the post office off the gold standard. I should have made a big deal of that.
All the countries in the world of the Union.
Yep, they're all on fiat now. And guess whose fiat it is?
Yeah, we can guess that. Well, today I found the Article 7 in the Articles of the Union, the Acts of the Union, and I found that in English, the monetary unit is marked by the International Monetary Fund. But the Spanish version of the document says that the unit is the franc gold, and even gives the correspondence with the gold, which is 10 parts of a 31st gram of gold. So I thought, oh my God, I found what Anna keeps talking about. And now you tell me I haven't. Because
well, you have, but what we're talking about is it used to be all across all the jurisdictions, the post office was always backed by gold. And they had so much gold out there in the form of actual stamps that were showing like a dollar sign, that they couldn't continue to back everything with gold. So the municipal post office is operating on fiat. And my understanding is that the territorial post office is continuing to operate in admiralty on gold. But for the purposes of having a safe place to put your money, having the money orders doesn't matter anymore, because those are being issued by these commercial banks and municipal corporations that are not going to function on gold anymore as of about a year ago. And I should have let everybody know that.
So that means that everything we've learned about buying monetary orders is not applicable anymore since a year ago?
About a year ago. And I just became aware of it about 3 months ago, that they had made this change. I guess it's not surprising that they would.
Yeah.
But then again, that throws us all into the whole maelstrom of having to deal with the fiat notes and the Federal Reserve notes. It looks to me that they made a change in strategy about 3 months ago, and that they have gone for a quote unquote deflationary death spiral instead of an inflationary death spiral. And that would be indicated by them, taking the money orders and making especially the international money orders remain in gold because they're under admiralty, but then the domestic money orders being denominated in terms of the Federal Reserve note. Which,
so if somebody, say for example, I go to Spain and I purchase a money order and I send it to myself here in Michigan, that will be backed by gold.
Well, yeah, it's whether it's an international money order or a domestic money order. Okay. So if it's an international money order, like a traveler's check, those have to be backed in gold. And the money order used to be backed in gold too. But now what they've done is they've begun the whole process of using money orders only domestically. Okay. So if it's domestic, you're going to be dealing in some sort of a fiat note and not be in admiralty where everything has to be backed by gold, and obviously not be in a Bank of Commerce situation where everything is backed by gold. So I would suspect that, say, any kind of international traveler's check, like American Express traveler's checks, those will still have to be backed by gold. And if you have a situation where, say that you are traveling and you want to have something that you can be sure will translate, you would go to your post office and ask for an international traveler's check or an international money order. And they should have, they will still have products like that available, but they won't have the kind of thing where you could just rely on your domestic money order to be valued in gold. That went out the window about a year ago.
Are you going to write an article or tell us where to find that? Where did you find that change?
Well, I didn't find it. One of our postal experts found that.
Okay.
I can't keep track of all of it, so I have friends and neighbors who snoop into these things on a regular basis. So it's a UPU thing. You can look it up on the Universal Postal Union website, where they have changes in different declarations and different altered.
Yeah, they have updates.
Yeah. So I would look back about a year and there should be an update, and it will tell you exactly what changes there are in domestic money orders versus international money orders.
I guess they are only leaving us Global Family Bank to work with at this point.
Well, I'll tell you, it is a very cutthroat, very nasty business where these guys are trying to, basically herd us up and, keep us down on the farm and steal our money. They're trying, and we'll just have to keep on top of it and keep bringing forward our claim and keep on point so that they cannot get away with it. Because if we slack off and stop raising our hand and don't, if we acquiesce to it even a little bit, they will, swirl around and find a way of stealing our money.
Well, thank you very much. I will just say goodbye by saying that here in Michigan, we are getting ready with the 5th True Bill for 5G. And we just started NOLs in vaccination, and some very nice people out there are getting our documents. So we're moving.
Excellent.
Thank you very much for your leadership. God bless you, Anna.
Take care.
Thank you, Dolores. All right, Alice.
Good evening. Good evening, Anna. I have one question for you. Are there any guidelines for somebody who wants to reapply for Social Security disability?
Not that I know of. Remember, it's not you that's getting Social Security disability. It's the franchise that's getting Social Security disability. Okay? It's the municipal corporation franchise that is getting the benefit. It's not you. You get to cash the check. you get to disperse the money for the benefit of the corporation, but it's not you. And so the way I encourage people to think about this is, just a second, I have to take this call.
Okay.
You know, we had an original constitution that came up for auction here in North Carolina on Bronc auction that Anna was interested in. And that was right when the storm hit. So on Bronc auction, you can Google that. And there is a full picture and an article on the original Constitution. I believe that is the only Constitution, and there are only 9 in existence. Anna and I both learned that when that one came up for auction. I yield.
And
She's back.
Is it BRONK?
BRUNK, Bronc auction.
Was that the
had a Constitution?
Yeah, that's true. I forgot that they had that web page up. It would be good to go and get a screenshot of the document right there and the write-up that was done. They only included the first page, but that is sufficient to prove that it exists. And we have the actual verbiage of the American English translation in numerous different documents. Plus, there are a couple of public archives that I deliberately don't mention on, forums like this because the rats could go in there and burn down the institution or, steal it or whatever. So, but yes, that's true. I think that it's very well documented on that auction website, and we should capture that for posterity. Capture any references we can.
Thank you, Anna. All right, you were talking to Alice. Alice, sorry about that.
No problem.
Back to you.
So, Anna, there is no guidelines at this point with disability.
No.
Because the franchise type of thing.
Right, and it doesn't affect you. It does not affect you at all. That's what so many people are having a hard time understanding. It doesn't affect any benefits that you're owed. That is a separate entity. It's not you.
Okay. Okay, I yield. That'll give me enough information to take back. Thank you. I yield.
Thank you, Alice. All right, Elvia.
Thank you. Okay, so I have a question about eligibility to run for the treasurer office. I've been told that because I have a passport, I have a passport from my country, and I also have a passport from the US, that I'm not eligible, even though, you know, I never registered to vote in El Salvador, and I never served the government in any capacity. I never had a job there. I naturalized here in the United States at the age of, I don't know, it was in the 90s. I must have been 18 or 19. But I came here as a resident. My mother petitioned me, and I was still maybe 15 or 16 at the time, so I was a minor. But you do have to register at the age of 21 in order to receive any kind of I don't know, in order to participate in society, you have to register. So I did register to obtain what they call a NEET. That's the equivalence of a social security number. And I did that as an adult. I think I must have been 21 years old. And when my grandmother died a few years ago, I had to go to the consulate to sign some documents in order to receive the home that she inherited to me. And so I renewed my passport in order to do that and not have to travel back to El Salvador. So I do have a Salvadorian passport. But I'm being told that I'm not eligible because of that.
Well, if you are a naturalized U.S. citizen, right, you started out in exactly the same spot as people who were born in this country, but then trafficked away from it and identified as U.S. citizens, okay? So you're in the exact same boat that everybody else is in, whether you are naturalized or whether you were registered and certificated, okay?
Mm-hmm.
So then you also went through the process of declaring your chosen adopted political status as a woman on the land and soil of your state. Okay, so you're no different than anybody else in that respect too, right?
Mm-hmm.
Having a dual nationality does not preclude you from participating and holding positions of trust in a state assembly if you are a naturalized American who's claiming your state of the union as your home.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so it would not preclude you from holding a position of trust in the state assembly just because you are considered a dual national or because you have property in other countries. If it's a state citizen trust that you're trying to undertake, then you would have to be able in good conscience to say that you had no other citizenship obligations or connections to another country.
Great. Thank you. Thank you. This is great. We're also, we are not born citizens there either. You have to be 21 years old in order to register. And we had a very similar evolution of government, and we were defrauded in exactly the same way. In fact, when we were part of Mexico, when Mexico fought a revolution against Spain, and the Central American states, the 5 Central American states were sovereign states. And when Mexico went back to an empire briefly after having fought a revolution, the Central American states formed a federal republic and branched out of Mexico. And we adopted a constitution very similar to the federal republic, very similar to the United States, the initial constitution. We didn't even have birth certificates until I think I'm the 3rd generation in my lineage to have a birth certificate. My great-grandmother, who was born in the 1880s, didn't have a birth certificate. This did not begin in El Salvador until like 1925. But most people did not even get a birth certificate, until like in the 60s and 70s. So, yeah, so we're not born citizens in Central America.
Right. So, you would, as a naturalized United States citizen, You were in the exact same boat as people that had been trafficked into being U.S. citizens. You were all U.S. citizens. And you all came home to your State of the Union and said, this is where I want to live. I want to be in the real world as a real woman, and I want my real rights. And so you're really not in any different category than anybody else.
Thank you. Okay, great. I'm glad. Thank you for taking the time to answer my question.
Thank you, Elvia. Fascinating. Okay, Anna, I just want to check in. It's a little after 7 California time. It's 7:11, and we have 4 hands up. How are you doing?
I'm losing my voice, but that's, you know, we got Annette on Marion. We better talk to Annette. Hi, Annette.
Hello. Thank you so much for taking a few minutes of your time to answer some of my questions. We have 3 really quick ones, and I promise I will not drag you out. So we have questions from our assembly saying, are we going to go back to the 2 bars on the dollar sign like we saw when we were young, when we actually had asset-backed currency?
Well, we certainly can, because we now have asset-backed currency. I think the bigger question remains to be resolved with the UPU. We have a lot of things that have to be resolved with the post office. But yes, when we have actual money, we will use the appropriate symbol.
Spectacular. Okay, and we have all of our pillars filled on Marion, and we are just waiting for the last posting in the newspaper with all of our elections. And so do we send, or how do we send all of our documents to you for your whatever you do with them?
Well, actually, at the county level, we don't do anything with them. At the county level, what you're working toward is the reestablishment of your union state. So you would be a county of the union state.
Okay.
That's your national level state on the soil. And you would be holding your population on Marion to be the sovereign authority.
Okay.
What goes on within the borders of your county, the physical county.
Spectacular. Thank you for answering that. And then we have one other question. This is kind of mine. So I'm also on a organizer meeting, and the next meeting, they're going to be discussing Sandy Marecki. And I had talked to you about a year ago about Sandy Marecki and the gentleman, I think his name was Thomas, that went to jail. Can you tell me, I don't know why we would be talking about that, or is there some, inside conversation about bringing all the different groups that are all talking about republics all together, or am I missing something?
Well, okay, just as a real brief rundown, we started the process in 1998, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And we were always focused on land and soil, right?
Beautiful, yes.
Tim Turner started the process in 2010, and then he went to The Hague and filed a bunch of paperwork with The Hague. But everything that's been done with The Hague it's of no use, because the underlying situation is not a military occupation, it's a mercenary occupation.
Okay.
And so, that's voided. And, I've tried to explain that to Tim Turner. I explained it and all the rest of it to all these people who are talking about restoring a republic, but they have not corrected their own individual political status records. So they're all still functioning as capital U dot, capital S dot, capital C citizens, right?
Okay.
And as British territorials, there's no way that they can ever restore any federal republic, because they weren't part of the federal republic and weren't responsible for the existence of the federal republic. It was the American federal subcontractor that was the Federal Republic. And they, Brits cannot restore an American federal republic. Only Americans can restore an American federal republic. So until they get their heads screwed on and officially declare and record and publish their adoption of their American birthright status, there's no way that they can do any of what they say they can do.
Okay, I did some research and noticed that their structure was very much de facto, and I was just confused why we would be talking about that on our organizer meeting on Florida.
Well, we wouldn't, except that people in Florida need to be aware that this other entity exists, and they need to understand why that entity is not properly organized and not able to do what they claim they're doing. All they can do is create another corporation. All they can do is create their version, a British territorial version of the Federal Republic. They are not competent to restore our Federal Republic. And so when they say they're going to restore the Federal Republic, they never had a Federal Republic.
Okay, I concur. I went through everything, all their stuff. Their website's not very organized either and stuff, but I was just confused why we were discussing them. But thank you so much for your clarity. I want to thank you for your time, and everybody that, Michelle, all of you, so grateful. Have a beautiful evening.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you, Annette. All right, Joshua Lee. And Joshua, you're muted.
He's probably gloating over the declaration of the new 13-month calendar. Either that or he's...
we definitely need to fix that. Hey, Anna, again, we're super thrilled every time we get to see you. It's awesome. We all appreciate your hard work. We're trying to work just as hard as you can, but we got big shoes to fill. I don't have a question, but I was in the chat. You spoke something earlier about the EMF, and can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
So I have been experimenting with all kinds of stuff and different waveforms of energy, and I have found a crystal, and I put a link in the chat, and that they call it Mystic Merlin Indigo Gabbro. And what you do is you take this, it's a rock with crystal in it, you take this and you set it like either in your panel right where the wires come in. And I've tested it every which way, and I haven't found anywhere where it does not work. But it actually transmutes for your whole house the negative effects of the EMF coming off of your energy system.
Wow.
Works super well. And I don't know if many people are super familiar with crystals, but a lot of times people use them. Well, crystals store a lot of negative energy that have to be cleared.
Right.
This particular stone is the only one that I know of, or anyone else I've studied with knows of. It actually clears itself. And so, anyways, I put a link in there. I wanted to bring that up. They're not expensive, but for those who deal with that sort of stuff, put it by your bed, a couple of them around you when you go to sleep at night. It's not that it blocks the negative energy, it actually transmutes that negative energy into something that is somewhat beneficial, as well as preventing the negative side of it coming in. I've been targeted, I don't know how much, so I had to figure out something. But yeah, this is one of the things that has helped me tremendously.
Well, whatever works, right?
Sure, go ahead.
Are you talking about Organite? Okay. Yes, Organite is excellent. Thank you. I yield.
Thank you, Laura.
No, it's not Organite, but it's Indigo Gabbro. It's Mystic Merlinite. It's a very specific stone. Anyways, I put a link in the chat. I want to bring that up because I suffered tremendously
Joshua, you're starting to break up pretty bad there. You're starting to break up. So thank you for putting that link in the chat.
Yes, thank you. I yield. Y'all have a good one.
Thank you, you too. All right, Cherie.
Hi, Anna. Thank you for your time. I have two hopefully quick questions. One is I saw several other people also in the chat. We're wondering, where can we find more information about the domes that protect our homes?
Well, you know, there are all sorts of companies that are specializing in this. One of them that I've used is Cell Guardian, C-E-L-L, Cell Guardian. Another one is bodywell.com. And those websites and associations, you'll start seeing there are all sorts of machines that can be used for this kind of purpose. The one that I bought is called the Excalibur, and it's a machine that casts a very broad dome, but they're no longer in business. But there are others out there, and we'll just have to kind of research more about that. But there are all sorts of companies now that are coming out with EMF shielding devices for your phone, for your computer, for your home and garden.
Thank you. That gives us a really good lead on where to even start looking.
Right, you can start looking there. Okay. Another thing you can do, which is kind of fascinating but strange, if you want to protect your food, your garden, you can just take a copper wire and wrap it around a wooden dowel and stick it in the ground, and it will do wonderful things for your plants.
Oh, okay. Thank you so much. Just adding one more thing. There's a company called Lambs, and they have hats that are EMF protected for our heads. Lambs.com. And then my second question is, thank you so much for that. That really helps. And my second question hopefully is quick also. I'm assisting a friend with their paperwork. And that friend is thinking about helping their family member also do their paperwork. And they texted me today with a question I didn't know, and that's, I guess their family member is on parole for a few years. Can they still change their status while they're on parole? What's your advice?
Sure, they can change their political status anytime. Remember that the entity being charged isn't your friend's friend or relative. It's a franchise that was created by a British Crown corporation or a municipal corporation.
Back to the Social Security idea also.
It's not you, okay?
Yeah, and I don't know the situation.
Yeah, so generally speaking, there's nothing to worry about for them changing their political status whenever they want to.
What I said to them was that I thought that they'd probably get 3 stars on their passport without the do not detain part because they have some court stuff going, but that when they go to renew their passport in 10 years, that it could go up to 4 stars. Is that thinking correct?
Once we take over issuing the passports, none of that will count.
Yeah. Okay.
You know, they'll be back to dealing with their citizenry, and we'll be back to dealing with ours.
Okay, I don't really know the situation, but that answers my question. Thank you so much. I yield.
Thank you, Cherie. All right, Anna, how you doing? A couple more?
2 more and done.
Okay, everybody heard that. 2 more and done. Go ahead, Aaron.
Good evening, Anna.
Hi, Aaron's iPad.
One question. Is there a conflict if a notary public comes to the assembly, becomes status corrected and all, and wants to volunteer to be a public notary? Is there a conflict?
No, you just have to keep straight which public. Okay? Because if you're serving our public, our people, then you are in land jurisdiction and you're serving as a public notary. Okay? But in your normal jurisdiction, you're a notary public. And,
Yes.
and all of that is just determined by where they set up their notary block, right? So
Yes.
if they say they're in the state of Washington and King County, right, then it's in the C jurisdiction. If they say just Washington and King County, it's in the land jurisdiction.
Gotcha.
So they need to become sentient of the difference themselves and set up their paperwork according to who they are and where they're operating from.
Gotcha. Thank you very much. I yield.
Take care, Aaron's iPad. That's funny.
Thank you. All right, Christopher Snyder.
I know you've answered this question a couple of times, but there seems to be still some clarity about whether if you own a business and you have an LLC, for example, because the federation makes, or the de facto makes you get one basically to run in their operation. Does that keep you from being a citizen?
Okay. To be a state,
To clarify, if you own your own business, does that prevent you from being a citizen?
no. But look here. There's only one kind of citizen as far as the states of the Union are concerned, and that's a state citizen.
Correct.
Everybody else is a national. We take our nationality from our state, right? And the requirement of being a state citizen is that you have no other, compelling attachments or duties related to any other government. And most people are unaware when they sign up and create something like an LLC or a any kind of S Corp or B Corp or nonprofit or whatever, they're unaware that they're giving up their ownership interest in their own business. And once they realize that and think seriously about the only real benefit, which is bankruptcy protection, they don't want to be incorporated. And they discover that they can operate without being incorporated, and that there are significant benefits besides actually retaining your ownership interest in your own business to not being incorporated. So first and foremost, I would suggest that maybe you talk to Neethi Bali from the North Carolina Assembly or some of the other people that have trod this road before and have actually taken corporations and have liquidated them, but continued to have what is called an EIN for banking purposes only. Mm-hmm. And this allows you to operate in their system without being in their system. Mm-hmm. It's like it says in the Bible to be of it, but not in it. And so that might be something that you would want to think about, before worrying about anything else. I guess the big problem that we have with state citizens owning corporations in the other world, so to speak, is that if they depend upon that corporation for their livelihood, can they really say that they have no other connections or obligations to a different government. You know, they're operating a franchise of that government for their livelihood. So, you know, if you're dependent on your business, as most of us are, having a foreign incorporated business that's standing under foreign law can create a conflict of interest. And that's where the concern comes from. Now, if you restructure your business to be unincorporated, if bankruptcy protection is not a big concern for you, then you probably should do that. And just generally speaking, should do that for your own benefit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the only reason why I'm asking is just because there's a lot of members that would love to be citizens, but are afraid they cannot be citizens due to the fact that they own their own business.
Well, you can own, as long as it's not incorporated, you can be a state citizen. Cheryl in Virginia has some good information on that, I think. And she was just kind of popping in here. Cheryl, are you there? Well, yeah, it's possible to restructure your business and be in it, but not of it. And it's entirely a matter for you to know if your incorporated business creates a conflict of interest.
I see. And then one other question I wanted to ask that's not related to this is I noticed that I know that you're putting out a how to build your assembly manual, so to speak. And I was wondering who's structuring that, because it seems like there are some confusing areas. Like in one area, it was talking about the separation of church and state, and it seemed to be misused a little bit. And there was an implication that a deputy would have to be elected in. So I was kind of wondering who I would direct those corrections, or how could I get those corrections? Who would I talk to, or whatever the case may be?
Well, we have a kind of a guidebook under construction that's on the TASA website, which is how to build an assembly. Is that what you're talking about?
Yes, that is.
Okay, well, if you have questions about that, why don't you just send them to me, and I will, you know, comment and forward them on to Terry, because this is a work in progress, and we very much want to catch anything that's causing cognitive dissonance for people. We want to catch it now. So please just send those kinds of questions to me at avanaban@gmail.com.
Okay.
And, you know, I'll explain it to you, but then I'll also explain it and share with Terry so that we can make whatever additions, deletions, or corrections are needed to make it crystal clear for everyone.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that. I yield.
Awesome. Thank you, Christopher. All right, now that was it. Now Gregory shot his hand up like this.
Well, maybe he has something to add to that. Some insight.
Okay.
Well,
Gregory?
Yes. How you doing? Hi, Anna. How you doing? Thanks, everybody. Actually, I had something real quick, a little separate from that. My daughter, she's an ASN also here in North Carolina, and she had just got a credential card, updated credential card, and she got pulled over a few weeks ago, and she didn't register the vehicle or anything like that. Still had the temporary plate up there for a while. So they pulled her over, and she presented her credential card instead of she has a valid license, but she presented the credential card. So they said they didn't recognize it. She told them to call the supervisor. They actually, the supervisor said he didn't recognize it either. They end up towing the vehicle and giving her, some tickets. They gave us such a runaround to we got the car back. We had to spend a lot of money. We had to register the car and, insurance and everything. But during the course of getting the car back, the tow truck company was saying, "Oh, we don't have to give you your car back," and this is just crazy stuff. End up still giving the car back. Now, was that considered kidnapping of the vehicle, or do I just let it go?
Well, right now, we have pockets of corrupt judges and corrupt cases all over the country that are still operating in this lawless fashion.
Right.
And they're still trying to claim that we're engaged in interstate commerce when we're just going to the grocery store.
Right.
And they're still insisting that we register our private property as their public property.
Mm-hmm.
But all of this is being addressed at a higher level, and it will get resolved.
Right.
That we're going through this kind of friction, as the old system and the new system are, going through this.
Yeah, because I feel like they forced us to register the car and put us like in commerce. We don't do commerce. Mm-hmm.
Right. Well, and if I were you, I would write a letter to the Chief Justice of the state court, and I would just very succinctly say, we were given these citations to these foreign franchise organizations that were created in our names without our permission or notice. And, it's unreasonable for you to insist that anybody register their private vehicle as something belonging to a public trust.
Right.
And furthermore, we're not involved in any interstate commerce. We were,
exactly.
There was no probable cause to suppose that we were, because our car was not registered. And that's what not registered means, that we're not involved in interstate commerce. Thank you very much.
Right.
We have to educate these people. I have met so many lawyers and judges that did not know the law.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know the law. They were never taught the law in law school. And so, you come and you knock them flat on the head and say, look, I am not a citizen of your corporation. And, this will not stand. This kind of behavior on the part of our public employees will not stand.
Yeah.
I have lots of conversations with attorneys, and a lot of the time they start out real smug and smartass. They're going to tell me what they, what their law. Then I just turn around and blink my baby blues and say, look, the law is for you is the Constitution. The law for me is the Declaration of Independence.
Right.
Two different populations, and you have no right to assume anything about me or make any suppositions. At which point they kind of go, but, we're all dealing with these pockets of both ignorance and corruption. It's hard to tell sometimes what it is that you're dealing with, but we are all dealing with it. And it's probably not going to get resolved until the state organizations are compelled to release the state trusts.
Okay, understood. Thank you so much, Anna. And thank you, Michelle, also. I yield.
Sure thing. Thank you, Gregory. Well, you did it, Anna. It's 7:40. Whew, and you made it through all those hands. So any famous last words before?
I was asked to let everybody know that, yes, we should have committees for the General Assembly that deal with International Business Assembly, General Assembly, and militia. Because each of these other assemblies, the three-legged stool, if you will, need to be able to interact with the General Assembly and to have help within the General Assembly to bring forward their issues, their concerns, and they don't always have that kind of an established way to communicate with the General Assembly if there's no committee for them. You see what I mean? So yeah, it's a good thing to have a International Business Assembly committee in the General Assembly, as well as the International Business Assembly itself.
Well, yeah, and the committee is probably a great place for people to do that research and learn, you know, do the learning.
Right, right. And for example, the Militia Assembly is funded by the General Assembly. So, you know, when they have, they want a new communication system. Well, they could independently bring that up as an agenda item in the General Assembly. But if they have an assembly committee that is there to interact with the militia, then the militia has somewhere to go and the committee can put it on the agenda. And they can, you know, they can have any questions can be answered before it goes before the General Assembly.
Makes perfect sense. Yeah.
Yep. Yep. Our forefathers were actually pretty well organized and had this great old complex machine sitting in the shed on the back 40 that we haven't used for 160 years. But, you know, once you oil it up, it works pretty well. Uh-oh. Doug on San Diego.
Doug, I think you're being called.
I didn't realize I was up, but yeah, one quick thing I wanted to say was the with the driver's license thing, they're committing subordination of perjury, trying to make you say that you're engaged in commerce when you're not. I yield.
That's right, they are. And you know what we need? We need to, all of us who've got years of experience dealing with this driver licensing issue, we need to form a committee of some kind or a special project group and just come up with a presentation package that everybody can run off and carry around in their car and just boom, have it ready to hand over to these yahoos the moment that they even come near us.
I totally agree. Totally agree.
And we need to have something that okay, well, for example, how do you respond to these guys? You know, the very first question out of your mouth should be, is this a consensual interaction? Am I under arrest? Am I free to go? So if they have anything substantial, they have to lay their cards on the deck. I mean, if they have any real reason to stop you, any actual positive probable cause, then they have to fess up and say what it is and either say, yeah, this is an arrest or not. I mean, that's first and foremost. Most of the time they're just fishing and presuming, okay? If it's an arrest, well, then the next thing you want to say is, all right, I claim my Fifth Amendment rights and I want to see a lawyer. And no, I do not consent to any kind of search or seizure. Okay, boom, 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 boom. And right there, everything comes to a stop and the patrolman has to make a decision of whether he thinks he has a strong enough hand to prevail or not. 9 times out of 10, they're just going to say, well, have a nice day, sir. And they're going to walk away because they're going to know that you're not going to play into their word games. You're not obliged to give them any kind of documentation. And number 3, they're going to realize that if they continue to mess around with you, they're going to be facing charges under the Constitution and not as statutory infractions. Okay, so you lay out those 4 things, and that puts them in a headlock. We all need to know that, and we all need to practice that when we are, inconvenienced by these random stops. 9 times out of 10, they're stopping you because you don't have a registration on your car. Well, it's not appropriate for you to register your car as a motor vehicle if it's not a motor vehicle. And, once you get your lawyer, all you have to say to him is that it's not appropriate for me, or it's not truthful for me to register a car when I'm not, as a motor vehicle, when I'm not engaged in any commercial activity whatsoever. And the court has to assign a lawyer. They have to pay for that themselves because the burden of proof is on them. Okay, so you can save yourself a lot of trouble and money just by knowing those 4 things, saying those 4 things right out of the box. And 9 times out of 10, they're just going to say, have a nice day, sir. And, if you have to go through the entire drill and you spend your time waiting in a jail and they're going through their process, they'll have to bring up a lawyer pretty damn quick. And then when you have a public defender assigned, you just tell them, it's not appropriate or truthful for me to register my car as a motor vehicle when I'm not engaged in any form of commerce. Boom. That just kind of goes. And then they're looking at having an infraction against the Constitution. They're not just looking at their little legislative statutory law, they're looking at the big one, which is the only law for them in this country. Now, they owe you good faith service. How was it good faith service for them to pull you over for unstated reasons or because they thought you needed to register your car as a motor vehicle? Okay, that's not good faith service. That's revenue activity. That's extortion. That's racketeering, privateering, inland piracy, tyranny, treason against the Constitution. And they're only getting away with it because they're pretending this game that you are their franchisee, that you are one of them, that you are one of their employees and franchises, agreeing to all of the rules and regulations that their legislature has passed, all 80 million of them. Okay? And we really need a package, a non-driver, non-citizen package, a non-motor vehicle package that we just lay on them. And we need to have these, 4 guiding statements or things that you say to them. Everybody needs to know what to say to them the moment they pull you over. If it's not an arrest, then am I free to go? If it is an arrest, why am I being arrested? And then they have to try to justify it, which of course they won't be able to do. There are certain questions you can ask. You can never get in trouble for asking questions. I keep telling people this. You can never get in trouble for asking questions. The only way that you get in trouble is by making statements and making the wrong statements, okay? So, you know, am I being arrested? Yes or no? Okay, if I'm not being arrested, am I free to go? Bye. Have a nice day. Okay. If they really have some cause to arrest you, say you're driving 70 miles an hour in a school zone, okay? You're still going to proceed and say, I claim the Fifth Amendment guarantees. I request a lawyer be present. Not an attorney, a lawyer be present. And I'm not consenting to a search or seizure. Now, all of this is scary as hell. And it can devolve into a situation where your car gets impounded. And you can have ugly situations like Gregory just went through, where they suborn you and they force you under duress to lie about your own use of your own car, right? But then you have the option to come back and prosecute them, and to do so privately, because they know they're not doing right. They know that they're operating as racketeers. So then you come back on them and you fully inform them and you swear out a complaint. Oh, well, then that gets them in a whole bunch of trouble. Now, I do this all day long. It doesn't bother me anymore. It used to. But, you know, I consider it an opportunity to educate bureaucrats. And every bureaucrat that we educate is money in the bank for us. So it's not necessarily a bad thing, but it does occur to me that we ought to have a more organized, almost a formula response that we can give to these yahoos when they start their business and at the very start of it, before they even get cranked up and find all sorts of excuses, to actually have something that's 1, 2, 3. These are the responses you are getting out of me. Here's the claims you're going to get back. Here's the facts. And here's where you're wrong. Right in their faces. I don't know. Anybody who wants to, you know, has a little extra time and has some expertise in this area, you know, Godspeed. Let's put together a private car versus motor vehicle package and just have it ready to hand these people.
That's great. We do have, you know, there is the travel kit that, you know, many people, there's different variations of it that have been kind of floating around the assemblies, and that's helpful to keep in your, you know, in your car. I almost said vehicle. But, you know, some of the arguments that come back, and I've just heard of these from feedback that I've gotten, is that when you argue that it's not a vehicle, the issue comes up that there's something called a vehicle identification number that allegedly is the claim that it is a vehicle because it has a VIN, right? Of course, that's not a legitimate argument, but it is important for people to know so that if they encounter, you know, these road dragons that want to harass them, that they have a rebuttal regarding the quote vehicle identification number.
They still have probable cause that you are using that commercial vehicle in commerce.
Right. Well, and that's the other issue too, is in a broad sort of general sense regarding the word commerce. you know, in a general sense, they refer to it as, you know, if you go buy groceries, they call you this thing called a buyer or a quote consumer, right? Which are these legalese terms. You can't just be a woman picking up milk. You know what I'm saying? You can't just be a woman buying eggs for your family, right? So they want to put these labels on people like buyer and consumer.
Well, yeah, and it also, but where they're going to lose it, Michelle, is that they've been doing all this under the pretense of a military protectorate and occupation. Right. So when the military protectorate and occupation excuse goes out the window, then guess what?
It all goes out the window. The entire house of cards is crumbling. Poof. Yeah.
Right. And the only way that they have a vehicle identification number is because they held on illegally to the manufacturer's statement of origin. Okay. And then they sold you a part ownership in a vehicle and made you pay the entire amount, which is inequitable as hell. You know, we've got these guys 10 ways to Sunday. You know, they just don't have a leg to stand on, no matter what they do. And yet they continue to bully and harass their employers. And at one point or another, it's going to come home to them that, hey, I'm a public employee. Oh, I'm an elected official, but, you know, I get an employee salary. Oh my, you mean I owe something to the public? And where's the public? You know, where'd the public go? Oh, well, there they are. You know, this whole thing is so ridiculous, folks. It's just it's so bad. We really need to get organized and just start pushing on these paper thin walls of BS that they have used to entrap and enslave us, because it is nothing but BS. It's all just nothing but verbal chicanery and misrepresentation and lies and fanciful suppositions about things they have no right to suppose. I mean, we really do need to call them out on it, all of it. All the time, everywhere, everybody. We all need to be talking about this. We all need to be calling the public employees to task. You know, who told you it was your job to come out here and harass me over petty bullshit and make false representations and claims about me and my activities and my private property? I want to know who told you that. I want that person's name, because I'm going to begin chewing at this end of the food chain and I'm going to go all the way up to the top. Mr. Trump, by the way, you know, you've had all these revenuers out here racketeering on the public highways that we paid for, causing us trouble. We think it's time that you stop this. In fact, your corporation has been taking possession of the manufacturer's statement of origin for all these cars that have been sold in this country, and you've been misidentifying them as motor vehicles and assigning VIN numbers to them as if they were your corporate fleet. Well, they're not your corporate fleet. And we're not your franchisees. So you can just cease and desist from these racketeering activities on our shores and pay attention to the actual law, which, by the way, is the Constitution of the United States of America for all British territorial citizens. Oh, well, gee, that's my son, guys. He has a date.
Oh, wow. Do tell. No, just kidding.
And he just pounded on the door and said, hey, I got to get going. You got to come take care of the rest of the business here. All right, so I have to go, guys. I owe it to him. He needs a night out. I will talk to you all next week. Let's all think about what we've discussed here tonight and give some thought to coming up with the ultimate road robber response and really, you know, see what we can do to get rid of some of these petty annoyances that cost us money and take our time and irritate the hell out of us. Not to mention scare people. I mean, it is terroristic when some guy with a billy club and a taser and a sidearm swaggers up to your car. All right, this is a form of terrorism. And it's time it ended in this country. I still recall a time when state troopers came up to your car once in a while and politely said, "Did you know that your taillight's out? Better get that fixed." Or when you were stopped on the side of the road with a flat tire, they'd come up behind you and put their flashers on and wait until a wrecker came or until your son showed up with a spare tire or whatever, or even give you a ride home. I remember those days when these people were actually public employees taking care of the public. And that's what they need to go back to being. We shouldn't be scared when we see a police officer. If we're just quietly going about our business and not harming anybody, there is no excuse in this world for us being afraid of a police officer, ever. And I'll tell you what, a little bit of community action goes a long way. We had a state trooper here, and I will not use his name, but we had a state trooper who was brutalizing people. He arrested a 14-year-old, but for being vagrant outside, past 10 o'clock, tied him up to a tree overnight in a forest in Alaska. The kid could have been eaten by a bear. Yeah.
That's inhumane.
Oh, it's crazy. And then in another instance, a native woman was looking for her watch. Her watch band had come unfastened and her watch had fallen off into the snow. And so she was outside, kind of scuffling around with her boot, moving snow, trying to find her, her bracelet style watch band, right? She and her friend. The same guy walks up to him and says, "What are you doing? You must be drunk." "Oh yeah, we are." Uh-huh. He escalated that simple situation into a knockdown, drag out fight with both these women. Broke their ribs, bruised them up, caused all sorts of trouble. They weren't drunk. They weren't causing any public disturbance. He was just being an ass. Well, so we got the community together and we went after the state troopers and we started chewing on his supervisor and then on his supervisor and then on his supervisor, and we just kept eating our way up the food chain. And guess what? He was fired, not eligible for rehire, and the guy that hired him and that was misdirecting him got fired, not eligible for rehire. And that put the living fear of God in a lot of these asses. And we need that kind of community action when we see abusive people. When we see people that are running around, swaggering and bullying and making improper arrests, we are protected from false arrest by the 4th and 6th articles of the Constitution, not the amendments, the articles. So they need to start obeying their work contract. And if they don't, they need to be out of work. Don't get me going. I got to let my son go on his date.
All right.
Love you all.
Thank you, Anna. We love you so much. And we'll see you next week. Thank you for everything.
Good night, guys.
Thanks so much,
Good night,
Anna.
Anna.
Thanks, Michelle.
Good night. Thanks, Michelle. We love you. Thank you.
Good
Good
night.
night.
Thank you. Good night. Thank you.
Bye, Michelle.
Thank you. Love you guys too.
Good
Good night, Anna and Michelle.
Good
Thank you.
Good night. Thank
Good
you.
night. Love y'all.
Be blessed.
Bye.
Michelle,
Is
can
Doug-
you stay on for just a second? I want to make sure I got these documents downloaded.
Oh, sure. Yeah, there's several PDFs in the chat, you guys.
I know. So but yeah, that was actually a really good session. I'm glad I made this one.
Yeah, thanks for being here. Great questions, great comments. Great resources.
May I?
Who was that?
Hey, Michelle, it's Bambi. Is Doug still on or did he hang up?
Doug, are you still on? I think he left.
Oh, this is a lot better. I was looking at the fee sheet that somebody else put up here from Tim. I don't know, but it looks a lot better than the ones that we do have. Some of them didn't make any sense on there because, like, why ask for a fee for a driver's license if we're supposed to have a driver's license to begin with? You know, that was just one of those things that kind of frustrates me. The other thing that I was thinking that was missing from the fee sheets was jail time, right? So we can charge the fees, but there's jail time. You know, they can print more money, but they can't print more time, right? And who wants to spend years in jail, right?
Yeah, they've done that to too many innocent people.
Michelle?
Yep.
I'm trying to find Doug. How can I get hold of Doug? Do you have his phone number?
You know what? I can connect you to on an email. I think I have your email, Bambi.
Yeah, BL Chemist. Thank you, Michelle.
Yeah, you got it. I'll connect you with Doug on an email right now.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Michelle?
Yep.
If Christopher's not gone already.
I'm not.
Something people need to understand is if you go to the top of the chat strip, there's 3 little dots. If you click on those, it says save chat, and then down further below, you can save it in a folder or some other way, and then you have the whole chat.
You get the chat, but you don't get the some of the documents don't translate over.
Oh, they don't?
No, I tried that.
Oh, okay. Well, it was just a thought.
Thank you for that recommendation. Okay, I'm just
Michelle, how do we get the documents if we weren't able to grab, like, I had to leave because we had our own Minnesota meeting, so I only got the first and the last part. Like, where are these chats located if you don't get on the meeting?
Well, apparently when I blast out the link to the Zoom, apparently you can download the whole thing from the Zoom link. And I send the Zoom link to all of the coordinators. And then of course I post just the recording up to Rumble along with the AI summary thing that it does. But if you're on the coordinator list, then you'll get the Zoom link, and the Zoom link allows you to download the recording and the chat.
I'm not. I get the link from my coordinator.
Well,
Mary
Leanna,
Grock, but
I could. Okay, so does Mary just forward the emails or?
no, she posts the link on our Telegram channel so that we can get on.
Got it. Okay. And so she posts the Zoom link because it should be on the Zoom link. They're up for a week, and you should be able to download the chat file from there. And
I see. So you go back to this Zoom link and download it from there. Okay, thank you.
Well, not the one to join the call, but when it's done rendering tonight, I'll send out an email to all the coordinators with the recording link, and the recording link on Zoom allows you to download the files that are the chat file and the video file.
Okay, I'll ask her for that. That sounds great.
Yeah.
And hopefully I have to go back and listen to the middle part that I left, but was there anything regarding the idea to get kind of a spokesperson for the GFG?
No, it didn't come up on tonight's call. Did I answer you? I did answer you on an email, right?
Not that I know of.
Oh, geez, Louise. Okay, I'll pull up your email and I'll respond.
Okay, because you did respond saying that was a good idea and that you were going to ask Hunter and Anna, but I didn't hear anything after that.
Okay, yeah. I did get a response from Anna, and although I might as well just tell you, although she likes the idea, it's like we're not quite there yet, but that's a good idea. And so I let her know that it was your idea. And so I think that if when they get to that point, and she didn't give any kind of a timeline, but when we get to that point, I think that she might be wanting to call you.
Okay. Yeah, that's good. On our Minnesota meeting tonight, people were wondering, what does it mean to kind of be a go? And last week she said it's not going to be this week, but maybe the week after or within weeks. And everyone's wondering if that was actually like for us to use our accounts or if she meant something else.
Yeah, I think she means in regards to being able to use our prepaid credit. So I think that but just caution. We've been, they've been working on this for so long that I actually had a gentleman on my assembly ask me if he could use that as evidence to put an offer on a house. And I was like, no, it's not official till it's official, right? So, but Anna tonight said we won't have to wait until October. So God willing, we won't have to wait until October.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate everything.
You're welcome.
Have a good night.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay.
Michelle?
Yeah, go ahead, Anita.
I was just going to ask you, I didn't want to put my hand back up because I know Anna was really tired, but we were having trouble with the bank account we had for our assembly, and there was something about the SNAP account, and the original coordinator took her name off of it, so there was problems with getting back into that bank. And a lot of the credit unions and banks we've been talking to wanted the EIN, and I remember Anna saying tonight, when you're not corporate, you don't have to have an EIN, but you can still use one. Is that
okay? Well, remember, corporate is not the same as incorporated. Okay,
correct?
Corporate simply means there's a thing, not a man or a woman, but it's a thing. Now, when you get your treasury committee together, that's a thing. You see?
All right.
So if that thing is going to be using a de facto bank, the de facto bank only speaks EIN numbers for the thing.
Okay.
Okay. So your options are to either wait. You guys could start the process to open up a global family group bank account for your assembly. You can, and if you haven't done that, you should at least begin the process for that.
Yeah, that's been started through the emails.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And then the other option is, if you can't wait for whatever reason, maybe you've got expenses, or who knows what the story might be. You guys have money and you need to put it somewhere that, and your assembly wants it to be in a thing.
Right. So we don't really have, they were just wanting to use their SNAP cards for different things, but I'm with you. I think we should just keep it where it's out of the bank right now. It's not that much, but why can't they just, use the cash and, do it however, instead of getting the EIN. So especially with the prosperity centers might be starting up pretty soon. So I think it's just a lot of hassle we don't need to deal with right now. So, okay. That corrects things. So I thank you.
You're welcome. Happy to help.
Have a good night.
All right. You too, Anita. Thank you.
May I?
Sure. Sean, is that Sean? Go ahead, Sean.
So I think a lot of people were confused when Anna was talking about the prosperity credit, because it equal to the silver and against
one silver
against the AFD to the gold. And so there was a lot of confusion of the two different jurisdictions those are used in. And so I don't know, maybe if that was covered next time, or her reference some papers that she's already written. I'm not sure. I don't remember. But
well, okay, so gold is international. It's
yeah,
international lawful money. And so what she was talking about tonight was in regards to the prepaid credit dollar. And
that's used for all the bills and like your mortgage or the gas company, the electric company, any of the services that the de facto provides you that you pay for, you can use with the prepaid credit.
exactly, you can use that because the internal technology will be able to calculate its daily value based on the fluctuating price of
And then that
silver.
offsets the debt that they owe us
Right.
and the country's debt, because that's the debt that they owe us. And people are getting confused with that, I think. At least some people were on the chat. I tried to
the bottom
explain
line is that the American Federation dollar, according to my best understanding or comprehension, the American Federation dollar is an asset it's backed by an asset that is gold. Whereas the prepaid credit, I mean, at the end of the day, I think it's still backed by the gold, but the exchange rate is going to be based on an ounce of silver.
Yes. I think yeah, I don't know why it confused so many people, but there were a lot of questions in the chat and I tried to help as much as I could, but I think they still had questions or they're not getting the difference between the two.
Sorry, we have a hot mic over there.
Oh, I'm sorry, my bad.
That's okay. Sorry, Sean. Well, thank you for doing your best to help out. It sounds like you were doing that in the chat. And, the more we talk about it and the more we are able to ask questions of Anna, it'll start to make sense, and we're getting pretty close, God willing, we're getting pretty close. It sure seems like it. So for those of you that have, one of the things that Anna texted me earlier this week, if any of you have Spanish speaking community on your states, that you may want to talk to status corrected people on your assembly that are bilingual that may be able to help. California has a huge population of Spanish speaking older people. So when the gates open, so to speak, it's going to be a massive influx of people. They're going to find out overnight that there's finally access to the debt, the prepaid credit being made available to us. And so, people are going to be just crawling in it'll be like an avalanche of people. So we have to prepare ourselves for that. And there's obviously going to be a gap in terms of the education for assembling, right? Status correction is just one piece of it. Getting back our prepaid credit is a piece of it.
Question.
But assembling is, something entirely different.
Do you all advertise down there in California? Do you advertise in any of the periodicals or anything like that, or is it all just word of mouth?
Right now, it's all word of mouth. Our assembly approved, dare I say the word marketing?
Well,
our assembly approved a marketing flyer last night, trifold.
Yeah, I think all the assemblies need to have a marketing flyer. And shoot, if you could shoot me a copy of yours, that'd be great. I could work on that for something like that for hours too. We had lots of people here in Alaska for a while, and then we had a lot of just the bullies just trampling over the top of us all the time, and so that discouraged like lots of people, and now there's only maybe 7 or 8 of us that meet every other week for an hour or so, and mostly just talking about current events of the assemblies and some wins and stuff occasionally, but not really, there's no way to get anybody else new. And then we're all working jobs to, keep the puppies fed and the roof over our heads and the kids happy. And that's just because of the price increase of everything. Some people had to get second jobs or the other person in the house had to go to work too, that was taking care of everything in the house. But so it's just and then people see these the acts of brutality from the de facto and people losing their houses or their vehicles or getting tossed in jail for long periods of time, and it's just that just discourages anybody from ever trying to do anything else but what they're told by them, and they don't have any it's like they don't have any idea that there is another way, even though I'm labeled crazy probably by 90% of my friends, but at least they're still my friends for the most part.
Right. Yeah, it's a lonely road sometimes. But for whatever reason, it's like supernatural. We were all called to this. And it's not as easy to, get people to see what we see in terms of the bigger picture in all of this,
Yeah, that is the most difficult. But I do believe the bank gives everybody the freedom to be able to, spend more time learning, doing the things that need to be done, not the things that have to be done.
Right, exactly.
Those have to go to works every day is going to come to an end, and then it's like, well, I need to do this because if I don't, then my grandkids and their kids will still be slaves. So
right. It's like somebody's got to do it. Someone's got to put that line in the sand.
Yeah, and it's hard to find people to stand on the line with you.
Yeah, it's true.
Well, thank you so much for all you do. It's great. You got one of the best shows out there. So
thank you,
a lot
Sean.
of information tonight. Incredible information.
Thank you for being here. And I will, when Albert finishes with the updates on the flyer that got approved by our assembly last night, I've got your email, Sean, so I'll get it out to you.
Thanks. I appreciate it. That'd be great. I'll share it with our assembly. I think we meet next week. So that'll be great.
Awesome.
All right. Thank you. Good night.
All right. You got it. Thank you for being here. Thank you, everybody.
Isn't she awesome?
We'll see you next week.
Just want to, can you do me a favor? Can you make sure that you get a copy of the video?
You talking to me?
Yes.
Yes. So the video,
I was saying you were awesome.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Christopher. You're awesome too. Thank you. I will, as soon as it's done rendering, I'll blast out the email too. It goes out to all of the coordinators that are on, on every state. So,
yeah.
Are you on that list?
Can you put me on that list just to make sure that I get it?
Yeah, you're on Colorado, right?
Correct.
Yeah, I thought you were on that list, but I'll make sure. I'll double check it when it goes out tonight, okay?
Yeah, if you don't have it, it's astatecitizen@yahoo.com.
Okay, I hope you don't mind that being on the internet there.
Nope, don't care.
Okay.
I'll give people my phone number too. I don't care.
And yes, I sure will, Melissa. I see your question. And by the way, Melissa, thanks for putting in that the list, that you dropped in that PDF, the bullet points list for opting out of the car registration. That was a good one.
You're welcome. Thanks for everything you do, Michelle. Appreciate you.
Thank you. Absolutely. I appreciate you too. I appreciate all of you. I mean, this is, sometimes it might seem like we're the bad news bears, you know what I mean? Like a bunch of we're a bunch of misfits around here trying to do this, but at the end of the day, it makes me think of Gideon's army. You know, if you guys, anyone's read the Bible, and there's that story about Gideon's army. And I think, you know what? We know we can't do this without having faith, right? And we just have to have faith and know that we're on this proper path and we're going to get this done. So it's really nice being on this walk with you guys.
I've always thought I was a black sheep, so I fit right in.
Right. You are not alone, Anita.
So I guess it would be a good thing for the state of the assembly to think about having some English classes like we used to when I was growing up. All the immigrants coming into the country, they'd go to the library and have English classes because they're not going to be able to understand everything about the banking system unless they can comprehend, because our banking treasurer did a really good a program the other night on scams, how not to stay away from the scammers and stuff. It was really interesting. So, I mean, there's a lot to comprehend with having that much money in your account. So,
well, you know, one of the things, like you just talked about, like English, you know, English learning and stuff like that, you know, we're going to eventually have to revamp the entire education system at the end of the day.
right. Yes.
And I'm not talking about, you know, restoring any kind of Department of Education or anything like that. Boy, oh boy, did those people blow it. But I just mean, like, you know, we're going to have to really take care of making all of this information more readily available. We're going to need things like, you know, we talked about the brochure and marketing. We're going to need to do all of that and make it really streamlined for people. So it's not always easy. Every state, you know, does things a little bit different, and that's totally fine. We're all about local self-governance. But I know that we've got really, really brilliant, very, very, very intelligent, smart people on these meetings, and with the skills that they might have to help to bring, you know, I don't know, different ideas to up-level our outreach efforts and streamlining things, you know, just as options. I think it would be helpful.
Yeah, I saw where Nevada put in tonight about a homeschooling program that they've developed. So I'm going to look into that for our assembly. So,
yeah.
So, well, I won't talk to you anymore. I know you're tired and want to go kick your feet up.
Yeah, my kids are so kind. You know, now that they have, now that they've got their cars, right? I've got teenagers and they can get behind the wheel and go run errands. So the good news is dinner's on the table waiting for me. Now that.
Wow, nice. All right. Have a good night.
All right, y'all. Have a great night. Thank you so much for being here. And we'll see you next week. Okay. Go ye forth and multiply.
Good night.
Good night, everyone. Good night, everyone.